Is there anything worse than loading up Football Manager for the first time, landing on the main menu and realising you don't have a save game, my dear? I know how that feels, so I've done something for you. I've gone out and found 5 teams to manage, which I think are really interesting. One of these teams has never won a game of professional football. Yeah, it's an interesting list, this lot. Today we are covering the top 5 teams to manage in FM24. I hope you enjoy this video. Let's get straight into things. So coming in at number 5 in our countdown, we have the German team, Union Berlin, a club that have seen a monumental rise through football in the last few years within Germany, and now they're going on their first ever Champions League adventure. That is right, in spite of the fact their media prediction is 10th, you are going to find yourself in the Champions League. And just a little reminder, this first season when you start a save game in FM24, it's your last chance to enjoy the current Champions League format before we get the giant group that no one likes. So yeah, enjoy it while you can. It's no secret that set pieces are one of the big headline features in FM24 with their big rework. And this man here, Christopher Trammell, he's built 4 set pieces, 18 corners, 16 crossing, 16 long throws. This man, he is going to be your set piece wizard. And of course, if you are finding yourself keen to delve into the whole new set piece system, an Union Berlin save could be a great way to whet the appetite. Speaking of which, if you've not seen my guide to set pieces for FM24, check it out. I'll put a link down in the description. The recruitment policy at Union Berlin in recent years has been successful. How sustainable it is, I have a question mark over. Their squad is a little on the older side. Of course, they have signed players like Bonucci this year in the summer. He will be retiring at the end of the season. And alongside set-piece takers, they've got players like Robin Nokia and also Danilo, who are absolutely insane in the air. So, yeah, if you want to be a corner merchant, you're built for that. Year 1, you're not going to have a whole lot of money to spend, although you could move on some players to sign in newer ones. But ultimately, a whole bunch of how this save game's going to go for you is on how successful your first Champions League campaign is. If you can get through a few rounds of this competition, starting from the group stage, could earn some money that is going to be very, very useful long term. Board expectation for the first season, a top half finish, be competitive in the Champions League. Not the most challenging save game, you're not going to get sacked if you don't get into the Champions League again, but equally, long term, I think the idea of trying to topple Bayern is always appetising. Looking for a short term bait to save with some Champions League football to enjoy, set pieces to make the most of? I think Union Berlin might be the team for you. Now, some people are going to have watched the first team in the list and turned off thinking, I want a challenge. I've got a challenge for you. Guangzhou Evergrande in the Chinese 2nd Division. This team are the most successful team in Chinese football history. In spite of that, they were relegated last year. Their owners, the Evergrande Group, a property development group, are basically about to collapse in real life. That's bled over into the football club. This team have won the Asian Champions League twice in the last 10 years. In spite of that, I mean, the league history graph really paints a picture. Here is their history. They were good. They're not anymore. Here is the first team. They've got one player on £10,000 a week, then their next highest earner's on £1,000 a week. Zhang Jiawei here is a good player. Whether or not you're going to be able to keep him around beyond the first year of his contract, I doubt it. You have no excess wage budget, no excess transfer budget. At least there is some money in the bank, I suppose. I think my favourite thing about a Guangzhou save is the fact that you have the actionable objective, maintain the club's stature as the most reputable club in China. You will be failing that. You might have noticed the stadium picture here. Just like 2 years ago, this club was meant to move into an 100,000-seater stadium, then the Chinese economy collapsed. I didn't mention it yet. You have got a transfer ban to start the very beginning of the save game. Fortunately, it won't last too long. Now, to be fair, your media prediction in the Chinese League 1 isn't the worst in the world. You should be a mid-table team, but really, the challenge of this save game is going to be stabilising the club. And then maybe trying to take them to the top of Asian football as a whole. Whether or not you're going to be able to get there, it's going to be a challenge. I do want to warn you, the rules in China are a little bit mad. Maximum of 3 foreign players. You need to have young players in your team as well. There's a limit on the amount of new players you can register during a season. So, yeah, read up on all this screen in detail before you take over. Otherwise, you might get caught out. This is actually a club I managed all the way back in FM13. It's been a while since I've been back here. They are a massive challenge this year. If you'd like to see me do another video specialising just on teams like this one, because I did find a few other teams particularly challenging, let me know. Maybe we'll do that as a future top 5 video coming sometime soon. Now, the next team, slightly back to normalcy, a Premier League club. No, it's not Luton, it's not Brighton. This one might come as a surprise. Crystal Palace? Did you have Crystal Palace in the list? Probably not. That said, I feel like they're a really interesting team at the moment. Of course, Roy Hodgson came back to the club in real life last season to save them from a potential relegation. And with that performance, for the last 10 years, they finished between 15th and 10th. They are the definition of consistent. Of course, the Premier League is always competitive. Media prediction you can see of 14th. In spite of that, board expectation, record a top half finish. Yeah, there are some lofty goals here at Palace. Now, you do have some incredible young players here. You've got players like Elise, who unfortunately is going to be out to start the year. The kind of player who, if you can keep around, you really could build a team around. Mark Guéhi is perhaps the star player of this team, at least from a defensive point of view. 22 years old, England international, looks absolutely incredible. And another Crystal Palace player to have on your radar is Matheus França, 19 years old, Brazilian, picked up for £17.25 million from Flamengo. And when you look at him, he is absolutely amazing for his age. It's just a shame that, like Elise, he will start the save game injured. Now, sorting Crystal Palace's squad by ability reveals something kind of interesting and tied into their real-life transfer philosophy, because their best players are a lot of younger players. Players like Czech Decore, who they signed from Lens for £18.25 million. Over the last 10 years, Crystal Palace have an insane net transfer spend. They buy players when they're in their prime and then sell them on for a lot less than what they bought them for, or just let the players' contracts run out. And in modern football, that's not sustainable. In the last few years, they've really pivoted. And whilst there is perhaps the hangover of that previous attitude with some of the older players in their team, the reality is that you're going to need to come in and continue this new philosophy that Crystal Palace have been building their squad around. And I suppose that is also reflected in the board philosophy here. You can see Steve Parish, the chairman, wants you to develop players using the club's youth system, sign players under the age of 23, sign players under the age of 20, and ultimately sign players from the lower levels of the domestic game. Crystal Palace changing their attitude. You've got to try and mimic that real-life transfer approach and maybe get some success with it. Some incredibly exciting young players to build around, a competitive league in the Premier League. First season expectations, again, a top half finish mean things aren't going to be simple from the off either. If you fancy a challenge, something a little bit different, under the radar, Crystal Palace. Yeah, Crystal Palace. Could be the team for you. I don't know where I'm going with this. On to number 2. In at number 2, we are heading to Vancouver, but not Vancouver Whitecaps in MLS. No, Vancouver FC in the Canadian Premier League, a team who have never ever won a game of football. That, I should say, is the case at least when you start your save game with them at the start of the 2023 season, because this club was founded last year. That's right, the Vancouver FC side that we are talking about here literally have never played a game of competitive football when you take over them. They have no history. If we go to the history page, it's just blank. Now, they play in a league that was added to Football Manager a few years ago in the Canadian Premier League, and whilst it lives in the shadows of MLS and also Liga MX, it is one of the free playable North American leagues in Football Manager, and as you can see from things, it's quite cute. There's just 8 teams in here. Unfortunately, of those 8 teams, Vancouver FC are predicted to finish rock bottom. So that's the bad news. What's the good news? There's not a lot of good news, really. You're over your wage budget to start your save game. And there's no transfer budget either. If we're going to look for a positive, here is your star player, Caden Chung, a man who I once DM'd on Twitter to make sure his footedness was correct in the Football Manager match engine. You can see here it says his left foot is very strong and his right foot is only strong. That is the wrong way round. No, I'm not joking. I'll put up the thing on. I literally DM'd him on Twitter like 5 years ago when I was helping out with the Canadian Premier League database. Fix it, Football Manager. I should say the Canadian Premier League is a kind of unique league. It's a smaller league with only 8 teams. There's a draft that you do where you get 2 rounds of the Canadian like high school / college system thing. It's called U-Sport, I think. It's weird. It's different. You get to do a draft. Everyone loves drafts. And on top of that, there is also a salary cap in Canada, which means the maximum squad salary is £11,500. So you will be on an even footing with everyone else, in spite of the fact you are a brand new club. Sadly, though, Forge FC have won the league the last 3 years out of 4. So, yeah, trying to get rid of these guys is going to be tricky. I mean, look at their manager. Look at that beard. How are you meant to compete with that? In case you can't tell, normally in these club to manage videos, I talk about the history of the club. With a team that has no history, slightly more of a challenge. In spite of all of that, though, I think this is a really fun, different save game to do. A brand new team, they've never had any history. Write your own chapter in it. Vancouver FC, Canadian Premier League. Something different, something fun. And finally, in at number 1, we have a team that have Chinese owners, or had Chinese owners, and the property market went bang. We're not going back to China, though, don't worry. It is FC Sochaux-Montbéliard, the French team that I've actually managed in Football Manager twice, so I can recommend them quite highly. Sochaux-Montbéliard have been French champions, have won the Coupe de France, and in spite of all of that, they find themselves in the 3rd tier of French football for, I believe, the first time in their history. Now, you might notice they finished 9th last year and still got relegated. Yeah, financial issues, Chinese ownership group, the Nanking Group. This team nearly got completely liquidated. They were saved at the start of August. So, yeah, it was quite close to the start of the season. Now, Sochaux have a record for producing some incredible young players, and with that, you have some insane facilities for the level you're going to be at. Your key man is Tony Mauricio here. You can see a player signed a few years ago for an undisclosed fee. Can't imagine it was a lot of money. He is your star player, but by comparison to some of the players in the league, he's not amazing. Now, the National League in France is an interesting one because last year, 4 teams were relegated down to this division, but as part of the French restructuring going on at the moment, only 2 teams get to go back up to Ligue 1. And so in spite of the fact that you are predicted to finish first year 1, you also have to deal with Dijon and Nîmes. 2 teams who, if we just have a look at them, they were playing in Ligue 1 just a few years ago. These are 2 teams who equally, they want to get straight back up to Ligue 1. And in fact, if I just click through the Media Dream 11, you can see it's just full of Dijon and Nîmes players. In fact, the only player featuring from Sochaux. There are no players from Sochaux featuring in the Media Dream 11. The board expect you to get automatic promotion by finishing top 2. That's going to be difficult, but the reason you're predicted to finish first, right, is you don't have any star players. Well, you do, but not to the same level, but their squad is deep. It's full of talent. And now, allow me to show you the most beautiful thing about this team. If I just tick their youth teams and sort by potential, is there a better site in Football Manager? I don't think there is. This is a club with an absolutely insane history. Founded once upon a time as Peugeot's factory team, I believe the first ever professional French football club. And yet, after years of mismanagement, they find themselves at their lowest level ever. Saved from the verge of bankruptcy, still plenty of talent to go around, a challenging first season to get promoted, take them to the big time, take them back to the top of France, try and overthrow PSG. Promise you won't regret it. Like I already mentioned, I am going to do a video of 5 really challenging saves to do. So if Guangzhou wasn't quite tickling your pickle, but you want something like that, keep your eyes peeled. There's more coming. Anyway, gang, that is going to wrap up this video from me today. I hope you found these 5 teams interesting. Tried to throw a few slightly different suggestions out there. If you want to see more videos like this of teams to manage, make sure to be subscribed. Drop a like on the video as well. It lets me know that you enjoyed this video. You'd like to see more. Football Manager has thousands of teams to manage. There's some really interesting stories out there. I wouldn't mind bringing more of them your way sometime soon. Take it easy. Check out my channel for more Football Manager content. And until next time, it's me, Jack. I'll see you in a bit.